everywhere, GBS.
The Insight at GBS TV Africa. 2114 is our SMS line, and of course tonight we delve deeply into a conversation that of course involves you, our viewer, the 2027 debate, of course, as we get to deeply look into it. Well, the political heat is rising, and the road to 2027 is already shaping up to be one of the most intriguing electoral battles in Kenya's history. The power plays, shifting alliances, and emerging coalitions paint a picture of a highly unpredictable contest. With President William Ruto facing growing opposition, questions linger: will the current opposition forces unite against him, or will personal ambitions shatter their cohesion? What happens if Raila Odinga clinches the African Union Commission chairmanship? Will his absence leave a leadership vacuum in the opposition, or will it pave the way for new political kingpins? And if he doesn't secure the AUC post, will he throw his weight behind Ruto or spearhead another challenge? Beyond personalities, the electoral process itself remains a hotbed of debate. Is the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IBC, ready for a credible poll, or are we staring at another cycle of disputes and uncertainty? Tonight on The Insight, we go beyond the headlines and into the heart of Kenya's 2027 political intrigues. What are the President Ruto's options? Can the opposition rally number to force a runoff? What role will economic struggles, youth unemployment, and international influence play in shaping the next election? Well, this is our conversation tonight, and I'm not doing this alone. Of course, I'll be joined by two gentlemen. George Ngaira will be joining us in this conversation. He's a political and governance analyst. Thank you so much, George Ngaira, for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Kwach, as always.
Yes, and of course, we also have our guest, Kevin Olianga. Kevin Olianga is joining us for this conversation as we get to dissect these issues of power struggles to know what will happen in 2027. We are trying to dissect what could possibly happen before or even during 2027. What will determine how the elections will be in 2027? These are some of the questions actually that we know we have to dissect, because as we can see, we have already been seeing and experiencing alliances being formed, and Gachagua is actually saying, the former deputy president, that is it this Sunday that we should expect him to actually guide his followers? Yes, so there's actually a lot, and that is actually why we are getting to discuss this in this particular conversation. But thank you so much for joining us. The conversation begins right now. Let me begin by you, Mr. Olianga, because there's much to discuss actually. But let's begin with Raila's AU bid. And the reason why we talk about, we are actually beginning with the impact of is AUC win or lose in Kenyan politics, is because Raila has been a critical player in the politics of Kenya for the longest time. Well, if Raila Odinga wins AUC chairperson position, how will actually this impact and influence the politics of 2027 from where you sit, Olianga?
Thank you, Coach, for having me. I'm always grateful to join the GBS family. First, let me pass my condolences to the family of Leonard Mambo Botella. We celebrate Mzee life, and we wish the family well. Secondly, I'm sorry to disappoint. The topic of today of 2027 election might come too early to predict who is going to take what. But basically, the Kenya politics has remained nearly the same. It has been what we call a tribe project, a project that started in 1968 with Kenyatta, where you kind of refence regional kingpin and decide on who is going to lead the Maasai people to the election, who is going to lead the Luo people to election, who is going to lead the Kisii and Mount Kenya and the rest. And that politics is dying. The steam is fading out. It's very clear that a lot of noise that is coming from the sector, like now you are talking about the deputy president telling us that he is going to give direction to his people. The question is, who are his people? And if you look keenly or if you pay attention, you'll realize that is referring to Mount Kenya. And that is tribal angle of politics. And I'll tell you for sure, that kind of politics will not take Honorable Gachagua anywhere, or will it take Ruto anywhere, or any leader. You ask me a very straight question. What happens if Raila Odinga win a AUC election, or he loses the election?
Yes.
For me, I'll pray that Right Honorable Raila Odinga get the chairmanship. It's good for Kenya. Of course, he has his experience as what we call a High Commission for Road and Infrastructure for African Union. He has been a leader, and at its best, he has negotiated a lot of peace process within Africa, and of course even in Kenya, where we've had several handshakes just to keep the country aboard. And I pray that he get the seat, because he deserves it, and I think he can really contribute a lot to African Union. Now back to Kenya.
Yes.
His exit will add value to Kenyan people.
Okay.
Because for a long time, the young people of this country are looking at leadership that is beyond regional kingpin.
Okay.
The young people of this country don't want to focus on those who are shouting Mount Kenya, or Kisii, or Luo. They want to look at a leader who can deliver, a leader who has delivered before, and a leader who has a bit of a character that is devoid of corruption and malpractice.
Okay.
And young people are tired of what we call a political economy, politics that never ends. Election ends, politics start the next day. While we are discussing all those politics, no development is going on in the country. Leaders are busy launching toilets, launching water pump, I don't know, things that are only MCA is supposed to launch. But we are busy focusing on who is going to be the next president in 2027. Well, we have a sitting president now who cannot tell Kenyans what he has done in the last 2.5 or 3 years. So my answer is, Kenya need to rethink the election process. Kenya need to rethink the kind of leader they elect. Kenya need to send every leaders that we have currently home, so that we can have fresh leadership, we can have fresh hope. And this country is a country of more than 51 million Kenyans.
Yes.
We cannot have a clique of less than 400 people who has been there since independence, making noise every now and then, telling us that they will guide us, they'll tell us the direction. It's not the right place for Honorable Gachagua to tell us the direction we follow. Kenyans know where they want to go.
Thank you so much, actually, for that. We are actually going to delve into that a bit later. But let me just ask you this. Still the same question of Raila's AUC bid. Yeah. It portends much to the politics of Kenya, the future, and major political players like President Ruto. Probably the benefits. Well, if Raila Odinga wins, and if he loses, what does it even portend to the political players, even those who are now forming political alliances? Let's just speak about the opposition and even to the president. What will Raila's bid, win or lose, mean to these political players?
Thank you very much, Kwach. First of all, like any other Kenyan, I do believe that Honorable Raila Odinga getting the position of being the chair of AUC has that diplomatic value because of what it places the country towards in as far as African and continental issues are concerned. And remember, he becomes the representative of the continent in global functions, the G7 and things like that. So it gives him the visibility that I think the country deserves, and it puts the spotlight on the country. So every Kenyan should wish Honorable Raila Odinga to win this position in as far as the benefits to the country are concerned. However, when you look at the Kenyan politics and how it has been over the years, there is no doubt that any Kenyan that has been in this country for the last 40 years has will for sure agree that Raila Odinga has been a critical pillar of the politics of this country, being an opposition leader now for the last 20 years. Before that, he had been an activist before he became an elected politician. And so, and over those years, he's been part of the Kenyan history and how it has been able to transition from the multi-party, the clamor for the multi-party politics, And then we get the multi-party democracy, the end of the KANU regime, the new constitution. And through all those milestones, he has been there. But Raila Odinga now is 80 years old. He has done his bit. And I think Kenyans have also come to terms with that reality that a time has come when other leaders have to emerge. One thing that people haven't quite picked up from the history of ODM as a party, the party that Honorable Odinga leads, and a party that I've been a life member for a long time, is that ODM had its best performance in 2007 elections, where it had almost supermajority members of parliament. Then when you look at what happens in the next election, which is the 2010 election, its representation in parliament went down. Then the following election, 2017, it's at its low. So the last election is at its very lowest. And all this time, Raila Odinga has remained the leader of ODM. So he's been leading a party that has been in decline. It shows that it's possible that over time, people could get used to you and then get over you. And so in as far as I just answer your questions, because you said then what does it portend to the Kenyan politics and the opposition in the country, is that then slowly and slowly new leaders are beginning to emerge. And for sure, and maybe to use this particular president as an example, he was a member of ODM. He would have been considered an undergrad at that particular time by virtue of age and experience. Remember, even him being from the Rift, the chairman of ODM at that time was Henry Kosgei. And Henry had been a member of parliament since 1979. You understand? So in terms of experience, wealth, and everything, he was way ahead of him. But still, President William Ruto, a junior member of the party, was able to upstage him and became the first of the region by virtue of the vote, the next vote that came. And for sure, he went on to even surpass his own party leader, because, I mean, he's president of the Republic of Kenya. So it will not be big news again if another member of ODM as well just picks up or copies or emulates what Honorable William Ruto has done and is able to pick up from where Raila Odinga has left and lead a very tough opposition, which this country currently deserves. Because as we speak today, we've all concluded that there's no parliament, and Kenyans now on their own, so that they're able to face this particular rogue government. So I think in opposition is that it gives way for new players to come in, and something that I've been increasingly encouraging, and I'm happy my brother Olianga has said it, that Kenya is at a point where now it does not need directions from leaders who've been there for 30, 40, 50 years. There's a window now in both government and opposition politics for new players to be able to come in.
Well said, Olianga and Gaira.
Yes.
But of course, as we continue the conversation, there's something actually that you guys have mentioned that also we understand, and that is the new alliances that are cropping up. Some led by Rigathi Gachagua, the former deputy president. And Raila, yes, is still a key player in this politics, and maybe as time goes by, we will get to understand the intrigues of all this. But a very pertinent question is how these opposition leaders actually might even unite against Ruto. We have key figures like Uhuru Kenyatta, we have Kalonzo Musyoka, we have Matiang'i, or we have Rigathi Gachagua, also looking to form actually a very formidable alliance. And but our question maybe will probe that how would this opposition look without Raila? And these particular opposition leaders, because for the longest time they have been united with certain ideologies, the opposition leaders. They are against this or they are pro this. What do you think, from where you sit, is uniting the current opposition leaders, Rigathi Gachagua, Kalonzo Musyoka, Eugene Wamalwa, working together, including with Fred Matiang'i, and even now Uhuru Kenyatta? You will find that some of these people did not actually agree in years past. Could it be just, could it be ideology, or it's just convenience? Let me start with you, Olianga.
Three things. The first one is that we rarely have political parties in Kenya that are ideology-based or issue-based, and that is a danger to our nation. Secondly, whether you go to Europe or Far East or Asia or anywhere, most coalition that has worked well for those countries has been coalition that are made after the election, not coalition before election. Because coalition before election always kill a democracy and will always dilute the leadership. Because you are uniting around a man. For example, today you'll tell me that among the senior most opposition currently is maybe Kalonzo Musyoka, because he has vied for presidency, and probably Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, because he was a former deputy president. But the question is, are they leaders that Kenyans deserve? You get. And that's why I'll insist and I'll add again, if Kenyans want to move our country forward, then the arrangement of, we are emotionally intelligent, and they know, and they have been pushing us as if we are just some kind of luggages from left, right, and center. Because today, a leader who has failed the leadership test, tomorrow become now the hero, simply because he's attacking the other person. So the question is, are we supporting these leaders on emotional basis or on tribal basis, or are we supporting this because they can be leaders? Now, to answer your question, the alliances that are being formed, to me, they are being formed based on tribal balances. They are being formed around individuals, and they have no benefit to Kenyans people. To me, Kenyans should go to new parties that are being registered. I like Brother Ngaira said very well, we will expect within these political parties, ODM, UDA, and now it's UDA plus, the other one is called Amani. Yeah. And we expect some young leaders to sprout. And I love the mentioning constantly of Matiang'i. He has delivered. This is a leader that has shown that he can do something for the country. He tried to clean the education mess. He has tried to do a lot of policies in this country that are still standing the test up to today. So such leaders should be supported, whether the like of Honorable Gachagua or Kalonzo Musyoka does not want to give them an opportunity. Kenya should give them a chance, and Kenya should vote for them. Even if they are, normally we have this story of, we call them, some are Farasi and some are Punda. This time, we are going to vote that Punda into State House. Thank you so much.
Okay. Do they have a common ground? And if not, what do we expect in 2027?
Just quickly, just to touch on something else very quickly that you mentioned about what happens after the exit of Raila Odinga. And I wanted to remind you that for almost 30 years, Kwach, from the time when Kenya got its independence to 1964 and the immediate fallout between Honorable the late Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, with the fallout between him and the former late president, is that then he became the leader of opposition for almost 30 years up until when he passed on in 1994. And for a long time, people would say, would never believe that there could be somebody that would ever come to replace Honorable Jaramogi Odinga. They would say these are colossus of opposition politics. But I tell you, after the passing of Honorable Odinga in 1994, shortly after, there was that fight for the Ford Kenya party that was there, and then which eventually led to the exit of Raila Odinga from Ford Kenya. He resigned midway and went formed his party, went into a by-election, formed his own party, and then ran into the next subsequent elections. And Kenya had a new leader of opposition, and that was President Mwai Kibaki, the late Mwai Kibaki, who then became the leader of opposition in the country. And he got supermajority votes after the second to President Moi, and Kenya moved on. There will be a person who will come second, Kwach, in the next election, and that person legally becomes the leader of opposition. It's unstoppable. And so there is no debate. So there is no debate about whether or not there will be somebody to succeed in opposition. Yes. There will be new leaders both in government, those new players that are participating in the nation building, but there's also going to be new leaders that are going to be there in opposition politics. That's one. But two, on the alliances that are being formed currently, both in the opposition and in government. Remember, President William Ruto as well is arranging his people. That's why he's merging ANC and the movements he's made in the last 3 months, which includes kicking out his deputy, bringing in a new deputy from the region, then merging his party with the ANC to be able to absorb a certain region that has never voted for him. It's part of the machinization that he's trying to do to be able to build a new alliance for the next election. Yes. And so alliances are not necessarily just in opposition, but it's both in government and in opposition. But as for opposition, we are having an interesting group of individuals that have never stood for anything in this country. You cannot, when you're talking about the independence of this country, they are never there. When you talk about the struggle for multi-party, none of them was part of it. In fact, they were the Kanu sharks that were terrorizing Kenya in those particular days. One was a Dio, and another one was a very long time serving minister. Remember, Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka made to Parliament in 1985. This year will be 40 years in active politics. And over those 40 years, he spent 30 years in government, up until he even became a vice president. So they're not strangers they're not strangers to the people of Kenya, and there's nothing they pretty much stand for. And I think we can take exception of Honorable Matiang'i because he's never really he has never been a practicing politician, but when given an opportunity, he probably showed that administrative skills to be able to translate policies into real changes. You know, every time you see a yellow school bus, that was a policy decision that was implemented overnight by this particular individual, because he was a minister of education, and school buses were being used for clandestine activities, causing accidents and things like that. And I said, from effectively within the next 90 days, I want to see all the school buses in the country given a specific color so that they were able to identify them. And that worked. He's the one behind the digital transformation that opened up the media business. Because then before that, to set up a small media station was a very expensive affair. But now with the digital platform, it's very easy to take up a new station. That's why we went from one state channel to now 83 television stations. You know, that transition is part of what Matiang'i said. And one of the statements that really impressed me, I remember that time, when people were struggling with the idea of moving into buying set boxes. And they were saying, no, you know, I want to hurt the poor people. How are people going to afford the 2,000, 3,000 shillings? And I like what he said. He said, we can talk of time.
Yes.
We can increase time and allow Kenyans maybe 2-3 months to prepare to get the 2,000-3,000 shillings that buy the set box.
Yeah.
But there is no debate about Kenya's transition into the digital transition.
Yeah.
So definitely somebody that Kenya can consider. But I wanted just to add before I finish over that is that Kenyans, there's a set of Kenyans that are constantly being ignored in the current analysis in our politics. In the view of what happened last year with the Gen Z movement and things like that, is that people are assuming, one, President William Ruto is going to be a candidate. There's no debate about that. And he's going to have supporters who belongs to him. The next batch of people, which is some of these old politicians that have been there for 20, 30, 40 years, are still Kenyans and have a valid constitutional mandate to run. They will run. They will get whatever they have. But there's another set of Kenyans that my brother Olianga has said, who then desire something else. And in that process of desiring something else, equally have a right then to be able to be able to form new political formations and go to the ballot to give the people of Kenya a chance to have choices on the ballot, which I truly believe they deserve. And as somebody who has a progressive mind, I do believe that that's the direction we should go. So there's going to be even plenty more alliances to be formed. We're just keenly observing. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, there is something actually, Ulianga, that you mentioned about tribalism. Because actually, or regionalism, that has actually affected voting, the way people actually even vote. But there is a shift to that, actually. And there's a call to nationalism. How is this going to actually even impact as we head towards 2027 in this general election? Are we going to experience what we have still experienced, where Kikuyus are going to back this particular candidate because Kikuyus have been known to be voting in one basket? Are we going to experience where Luos, because Raila is the de facto kingpin of the Luos, if Raila says vote for Ruto, if Raila stands, that is where they're going to vote. What shift should we actually expect in 2027?
Just to give you a response to your question,
yes.
I'll tell you that number one, truth is never sweet, it's never palatable. And to tell Kenyans the truth is that it is KANU still ruling since independence. We only had a brief pause during the Kibaki time, but is KANU still in power? And there are mechanisms.
Kibaki was in KANU.
I know, but he briefly disagreed with the Moi and formed his party, basically joined the John Keane DP party and Munyes, and later on he became president at the DP. And he has, for a longest, until his demise, Kibaki remained an independent-minded opposition leader in Kenya. And you can give him at least a bit of understanding where he's coming from and why he disagreed with the KANU brigade in the early 90s. But now, back to our point. We are being lied to. We are being manipulated. The reality is that it's KANU in power. We have some of them claiming to be in opposition. Some of them are now running the Ruto administration, including the president himself. The question Kenyans should be asking themselves at this juncture is whether KANU has added value to our economy. I'll give you an example of history. In 1983, when then President Moi was in power, he had a choice to implement what ECP had suggested, which is science and technology, or to go to IMF and get the advice from IMF. The decision to join IMF by Moi then messed the economy for nearly 20 years. Now, 40 years down the line, Moi said, and I quote, KANU will rule for 100 years. Now, KANU is at 60 years. But now, 40 years down the line from 1983 to now 2023, Ruto was again, in a different set of events, had an option to continue with Vision 2030 that Kibaki had started, that Uhuru tried to implement some of it, although was doing a mix of both, and to go to IMF for advice. Again, Ruto chose to go to IMF. Today, we have a debt of 11 to 12 trillion. You get? Over 80% of our GDP is debt, a debt we cannot pay. We have a wage bill we cannot pay. You get? And zero development for the last 3 years. Forget about the inflation, which is over a 2-digit. Employee minimum wage has been constant between 12,000 to 15,000, regardless of the fact that you cannot get a 1-bedroom house in Nairobi today with less than 12,000. Yes. So basically, if you are asking me whether Kenyans should choose a new direction, a new perspective in politics, a new 2027 with the new crop of leaders, then they should forget about the alliances that are being formed by the Ruto administration. They should forget about the alliances that are being formed by now the despot Honorable Rigathi Gachagua. I'm sorry to use that word because it doesn't inspire Kenya economically. Yeah. And they should look into leaders, the young leaders like now Matiang'i, and some that I know as time go by will be able to come up. We need fresh leadership in this country. We need to end KANU rule. They are just changing name. From KANU to UDA to I don't know, Kenya Kwanza. Tomorrow there will be something else. Okay. Nyani ni wale. Okay. Mustudi ndo tunabadilisha.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting. Let me ask you.
Yeah.
IBC.
Yes.
Has been quite critical in all the elections, or rather informing government. And we have had opposition leaders, we have had key figures actually complaining about IBC, the commission. We have seen Raila for the longest time, he's actually been saying, he's been complaining. We have some issues currently on IBC. And I'm actually asking, from where you sit, maybe just to Kenyans, what are some of these issues actually that we have with IBC, and actually how are they going to even impact in 2027 as they stand? Because we do not have IBC still. Do they have impact?
A lot.
Okay.
A lot, Kwach.
Why even the delay?
You know, it's unfortunate that a country can even stay 2 years without an electoral body. Something that shouldn't happen in any country that respects the rule of law and this law and order. It's just unimaginable that something like that can happen. That you have a constituency like Banisa there in Northeastern, whose member of parliament, they lost their member of parliament sometime back in 2023. They're almost going to 2 years without a member of parliament. You know, it's very unfortunate. IBC remains a critical agency in this country because it determines who forms government. And anytime IBC fails to perform its mandate, unfortunately, we lose lives. It's that serious, because in Kenya, elections is a very contested issue. And so it is important that the existence of IBC and its operations in accordance to the law remains something that is constant, and at no point should there be a vacuum like the one we've experienced. It just shows the kind of leaders that we have, because we have a country now, Kwach, where some gangsters can come from a different country, come here, arrest somebody, and drive with the person all the way through the public border, through immigration, into the other country, unquestioned. Something that would never happen here, because you saw what happened with Kizza Besigye, and he said, look, I was taken through customs. You understand? With individuals that this government and the Uganda government can't tell who they are. You know, something that would never happen in any country that takes national security very easily. That's a critical government institution. So it relates to what I'm saying with IBC, that when you have an institution as critical as that one, that is not being given the priority and the seriousness that it deserves, what happens today, God forbid, that we lose a president, because the president is also human. He can lose his life just like President Magufuli can become sick and maybe go. And we're all human beings. What happens at this particular time with no IBC in existence, yet the president is the appointing authority of the IBC chairperson? You find yourself again in a very serious problem. IBC has had challenges. Part of it has been the physical infrastructure of the IBC because of how it's structured and how it's supposed to operate based on the policies and the mandate it has been given. You know, representation across all the sub-counties, and the sub-counties now actually have increased because we have 290 constituencies, but when you look at the population projection, currently we do have what you call the administrative boundaries, which are different, fairly different from the political boundaries. We have 315 sub-counties. Even though, and 350 sub-counties, even though there's still room for other sub-counties being added. For example, Nairobi County here, we have 17 constituencies, yet we only have 11 sub-counties. That tells you that there's potential of adding at least 6 constituencies in this particular area. That means even scaling the size of IBC is going to be something that is important. So we've had a challenge with the physical infrastructure, we've had a challenge with the human infrastructure, that is the staff that then are able to work and operate in the IBC offices across the country. But the last and most importantly is the quality of leadership within the IBC. You see, Fred, when Honorable Raila Odinga, when Raila Odinga went to court in 2017, and the Supreme Court, the highest court in the country, gave a verdict that this process was an illegal process and nullified the whole election. You see, that illegality was not performed by animals. It is individuals. There are characters who worked in that particular institution. They are the ones who didn't do their jobs as they were supposed to do. There was not one single commission of inquiry to find out who failed in doing what. You had the DPP then, Keriako Tobiko, giving a statement and said he's going to look into the matter and prosecute any IBC official that was part of what the court has duly said was an illegal process. What happened after that? Those commissioners became ambassadors. The person that was in charge, remember the server debate?
Yes.
The person that was actually in charge of the server is a current serving PS, it's James Mohati.
Yes.
You know, it's like he was rewarded with a good job for doing a good job, yet this is a failure that is supposed to be in court or through an inquiry answering as to why the server failed. Because that issue costed lives. There are Kenyans who protested on that issue.
Yes.
And they ended up dying, you understand? So IBC remains very critical. It has some very serious challenges. I think what Kenyans need to look at is, one, the issue of policy and accountability within the institution, as well as funding of IBC to delink it from the presidency. Because if you have an IBC that is dependent on treasury and the treasury that is being managed by the president, it means then it puts us in a situation where we are now, where now IBC has been all along waiting with the president to act on the issue of initiating the select panel. You see, there's a process that's not supposed to be done by the president because the president is also part of a political plan.
Interesting. You talk about some few reforms actually that are very important in IBC. But even beyond the reforms, what other reforms actually can we embrace that could actually even help Kenya to better its democracy generally within IBC and even outside, to ensure that we have a better democracy that is quite enhanced within the system?
To me, I'll suggest 4 quick reforms that we need from the IBC. First one is money. If you want to oversee efficient, fair, and credible election, we must know the source of funding of IBC. We are in a country where still up to date, the funding of IBC is from foreign government. You talked about foreign interference into our election. That's where it fits in. As long as we keep printing ballot boxes, ballot papers, as long as we keep procuring gadgets that we don't know from where, last minute from foreign country, as long as we keep taking money from foreign countries, our election will never be fair, credible, and delivered in the right way. Secondly, we need to control how candidates from MCA to the president, where they get their money. There must be a declaration of where do you get your money and how much are you allowed to spend in your election. We cannot have a situation and I'm happy we've seen it work in Europe and in the US. We cannot have a situation where one MCA is spending 40 million to vie for an election and another one is spending 500,000.
Yes.
That is not fair. An election.
Okay.
There must be a limitation to how much an individual can contribute to their campaign.
Okay.
Therefore,
Yes.
when Kenyans now contribute for you or do for you some sort of a rambi towards your election, then they can own you.
Okay.
And through that, we can now have what we call leaders that are elected by Kenyans, not leaders that bribe Kenyans to put them to office. Thirdly, we need to decentralize IEBC. Remember, the election of Kenya is determined by 290 constituency. I'm wondering if we cannot announce president until all votes are counted in 290 constituency. Why are we having a president in State House when there is a constituency that is not being represented?
Very true.
That is illegality. But now to sort that, we need to decentralize IBC so that we can have commissioner representing probably what we call the old provinces, the 8 of them. Maybe 4 counties, 1 commissioner. So that we can have commissioners that have the knowledge of IT and the knowledge of law, representing these 8 blocks or 9 blocks. Then we can have now what we call overseer.
Yes.
Just few, maybe 4 or 5 within Nairobi. Election should be announced where the voting is being done, not in Nairobi. The business of relaying elections to, I don't know, Bomas is illegality. The constitution say 290 constituency. Let the announcement of election be done at the constituency level and be announced within that region. Those are the reforms we need to have. And the issue that formation of IBC has delayed, to me, it is intentional. Those who are delaying IBC know how they will benefit from that delay.
Thank you so much. I think it has been indeed a very candid conversation as we continue looking into the issue, the debate of 2027. But even far from it, not so far though, are some issues actually that are affecting our country, Kenya. And I wish us to talk about them because time is quite short. And let's just begin with the US policy, which actually, by Donald Trump, which has affected the African continent, if I can say. So the US under President Donald Trump has actually enacted a 90-day pause on foreign trade, including freezing $13 million meant for Haiti, if I'm not wrong, Haiti security mission. Generally, how will this even affect the sustainability of Kenya's operation, number one? And how does it affect even the relations between now the US and even the African nations? I don't know who wants to go first.
Maybe I'll do it. Coach, President Trump is just doing what he actually promises people. There's a question you asked my brother Olienga that going into 2027, are we likely going to live with the era of tribal alliances, or are we going to have nationalism? People that love the country and want the country to do well, and then how big is that portion of individuals that just love the country? Nationalism is the in thing across the world, and that's what you call the conservative movement, because the emergence of the conservative movement is that people that believe in family, in communities, and a strong country. And so that becomes the core of the movement that you have as a conservative. And I think in this country, we're coming to a position where now we must begin to build an audience of people that love the country and want the country to do well. And I think we are at that position because the Gen Z movement showed that it's possible for a set of individuals to align on a particular issue and come out in large numbers as they did in almost 35 counties to be able to do that. If that can be repeated, by the way, in 2027 election, then we are likely to come up with a very different scenario, because currently we are working with ethnic projections. And we're saying these guys are 5 million, this 4 million. But we are forgetting, when you cut through those communities then, how many of them are beginning to accept that this is the time now we work on the issues that support the country? Because today, if you ask any Kenyan that what are his topmost issues, he will tell you is the economy and jobs. That you see the economy is not so good for us, so I'm not able to take care of my family. And the young people then who have gone to school are not even able to work. Those are the top issues, and not a community. There's no community that has offended anybody. But when you look at the kind of alliances that are being formed currently, they're still working on the old arithmetics of ethnic groupings and ethnic alliances to be able to do that. So President Trump did promise, did run on a national platform. He has done that for many years. That's why he keeps saying that America first. And I think he's done the right thing, because it's unfortunate that 200 countries across the world cannot fund an organization just because one country has exited. It shows over-reliance on American taxpayers. And Donald Trump had already told the Americans that how can we have inner cities in New York like Brooklyn or Baltimore in Maryland, which are struggling with no education facilities, no factories to get jobs for the black people, and yet you're sending our dollars to some corrupt dictators and warlords in other countries. It's one of the things that actually, now that you've raised it, that has always offended me, like in this country. There are people who've destroyed their countries, Kwach, in Sudan, in Ethiopia, in Congo, and then run to Kenya to live a flashy life. You understand? The characters you're seeing here driving TX and V8s here in the Sudanese and Ethiopians and Somalis, and a Somali minister lives in South Sea and only goes to office by plane and comes back to Nairobi. Yet the real Somalis are in Somalia paying the price of their actions. A time must come, and is going to be part of the things we're going to offer in our conservative movement, is that we must now come to a time where we say that Kenya has carried the burdens of other countries for a long time.
Yes, thank you so much. Actually, I think you can also express yourself on that. I also you talk about Congo, because he's also mentioned it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think very clear is that Trump has proven that he's not going to interfere into other countries' affairs, more so election, on leadership, and how you manage your countries. He is more focused on trade wars and probably being supremo over China and BRICS in general. And that is his kind of politics he wants to go through with. Now, to me, I thank Trump for one thing, and I agree with my brother. We cannot have a country where we cannot raise 1 billion Kenya shilling to invest in mosquito net to fight malaria, while we are squandering billions of shillings.
Absolutely.
And of course complaining that this 1 billion is going away, so it's going to affect us. It is time that we invest. And I believe, even in the healthcare, why are we not investing in research in HIV/AIDS drugs? We had a doctor that was shot, that was researching in this market called in Isli, and he did a lot of research. We could not protect this doctor, was killed by thugs, when we can actually give a member of parliament or a cabinet secretary over 20 or 15 or 10 security men. But we cannot give a doctor who is doing a research on HIV/AIDS even 5 policemen to protect his life. That tells you how we are over-relying on foreign countries to finance things that are critical to us, which is healthcare, education, how we run our election. Those are the critical things. But we allow foreigners to come and guide us, to give us money. And of course, when they do that, they also control the outcome. Because you cannot expect somebody to give you money and not to control the policy direction. Today, we have a president insisting on vaccinating our livestock for a market that is being closed. Iron curtain is being raised in US. Iron curtain is being raised in Europe. Which one market are we looking for in Europe and in US when the right market is within the East Africa community and Africa? We signed a declaration in Rwanda saying that we want to focus on African market. What is the rush for president to give a dangerous vaccine to our livestock that is going to affect our what we call the sustainability of the livestock farming in Kenya, in order to please foreigners who are already saying that they don't need to do trade with us? To Congo, it's a question of whether East Africa is ready to stand with Congolese people. Congo is a mess because of foreign influence. Belgium, France, US, South Africa. Congo is a place where minerals are mined, but the sellers of these minerals are cartels from other countries. So I support East Africa community. I support what Paul Kagame said, that we cannot allow East Congo people to suffer, and we watch them suffer simply because somebody is in leadership whose work is just to impress foreigners. So it's high time Congolese people are given an opportunity to stand with the leaders they want. We know the current leader, Chikedi, was a foreign, was supported and fully put in Congo by foreigners who basically want to mine minerals.
Your closing remarks in 2 words?
In a nutshell, it's high time we move from the Kanu regime. The secessional paper number 10 is a dead paper. It's no longer developing the nation. Kibaki came up with Vision 2030. It's high time we go back to that. Let's focus on our social health care. Let's focus on our education. The president should pay more attention in the next 2 years that are remaining on how he can improve education, social health care, and he should stop screwing the workforce, the employees who are overtaxed, and the minimum wage is not increasing. Finally, when it comes to 2027, Kenyans should focus on leaders who are delivered before, not leaders who simply want to align the tribe. Leaders who want to say they're the kingpin. We don't need kingpin. The tribal project is dead. We have a fresh Kenya. We have young people who know what they want. They will be shocked.
Okay.
Yes.
No Kenyan makes a mistake. I've always said that no Kenyan makes a mistake by going to the ballot to choose a leader of his own choice, because that's what democracy is all about. But a time has come when in this country, and as Kenyan citizens, we must now begin to put the country first. And that when you're making any decision, be it a personal or a democratic decision like that one, we must think at who wants to serve the country best, and not just as a kind of sideshows that we have in this country at this particular time. Thank
you so much, gentlemen. Mr. Kevin Sediko Lianga, the Secretary General for Conservative Round Table Association. And of course, we also have with us George Ngaira. Thank you so much. Very capable leaders, and I'm looking forward to having such minds contesting even up to presidency. We can have a good deputy president and a president, or
that will
we say amen.
Can
we say amen.
We say amen.
You guys can actually lead us to a greater Kenya. But of course, thank you so much, you, our viewer, for always finding time to give us listening here, to listen to us in this broad conversation. When we come to hear you every Friday from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. This conversation is meant to highlight some of the critical issues and things that actually affect you, our viewer, as a citizen of Kenya and, of course, a citizen of the world. Well, my name is Eugene Kwach, and this is GBS TV Africa. And, of course, you've been watching The Inside. And on behalf of everyone who has made this a success, well, good night.